Domestic violence is predictable.
I just don't come across people like that very often. I look at the world a little differently. I miss my friend. And I just wish I had more time with her.
New Canaan mother of 5, Jennifer Dulos, presumed killed by her estranged husband Fotis after a custody battle dating back more than 2 years.
We all know that the most dangerous time in a relationship is when you are leaving.
Perry Mason, mother of 2, whose remains were found in the woods near where her ex-boyfriend Jason Watson worked.
It was just like a piece of your heart is somewhere you don't know.
Watson, the prime suspect in her death and disappearance, already arrested on domestic violence charges several days before Mason went missing. Experts say the recent killings in the state more violent than in the past.
Guns have always been predominantly the use of force in domestic violence homicides. That's dropped to where we're seeing more knives, hands and fists, for example.
Christine Holloway, found beaten to death in her Ansonia home. Her boyfriend pled not guilty to her murder. Their 1-year-old daughter, Vanessa Morales, is still missing.
Those are very intimate crimes, very emotional type crimes, and something you would expect to see in a domestic violence homicide. And this year, unfortunately, there's been a lot of those types of homicides.
Domestic violence is predictable, but even as the leading state in the nation pushing for domestic violence reform, it has not proven preventable in Connecticut. The violence of the homicides and closeness in proximity, partly why it feels like there were more homicides in 2019.
When you have a case that's a very high-profile case, it sheds a light on the other homicides as well as the topic of intimate partner violence. So it's heightened awareness for sure.
According to the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence, in 2019, 14 people, including Jennifer Dulos, are suspected to have been killed by their partner, an average number for the state. Intimate partner violence homicides accounted for 13% of the state's homicide rate from 2000 to 2017. Nearly 90% of victims are women. Most of the domestic violence deaths in the state happened in the latter half of the year, but it's Jennifer Dulos' case that has gripped the state and the nation. It may help change laws in custody cases in civil courts going forward.
That the parties come in with parity, they're equal. And the court always considers the best interest of the child, and the best interest of the child is deemed to be 2 parents working collaboratively together for the best interest of the child. When you have domestic violence present in a relationship, that skews the dynamics.
Jennifer Dulos lived in State Senator Alex Bergstein's district. She is proposing a child safety first bill to level those dynamics.
That family violence and abuse must be considered before other factors in custody cases.
Currently, the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence and Interval House are working to prevent domestic violence through education. They say domestic violence is a learned behavior.
The most important piece about domestic violence is that we all have to get into the business of preventing it. And to prevent it, you really have got to begin working with children. All of the studies, whether it's the Center for Disease Control or other studies, show that children who experience family violence repeat it.
We just launched in September of 19 a program called Coaching Boys into Men. It's a national model where there are a number of coaches in Connecticut who are using an evidence-based curricula to talk to their male players around these concepts of nonviolence toward women.
30 years ago, Tracy Thurman took law enforcement head-on when she sued the Torrington Police Department in federal court for ignoring her calls for help when her now ex-husband beat her. The last attack in 1983 landed her in the hospital for 8 months. She still uses a walker today. Tracy Thurman helped change Connecticut's laws. Since then, Connecticut's progressive laws have influenced domestic violence reform nationwide. Connecticut recently became the first state to have 100% participation in the lethality assessment program. a questionnaire created at Johns Hopkins University that officers use to evaluate the severity of a domestic situation.
This lethality assessment gives the officers on hand an immediate looking glass into how dangerous that situation is and hopefully make the positive changes to get the victim out of those circumstances.
It connects them to resources they need.
The difference with this tool is that we know of the victim and how to reach the victim.
Tracy Thurman's case changed the way law enforcement, lawmakers, and the criminal court system look at and treat domestic violence. Jennifer Dulos and the 13 other victims killed in 2019 will leave their own legacy in raising awareness, connecting victims to needed resources, and making society's intermediaries work together.
If we have the support of the legislature and the judiciary and the social service agencies that can be resources to these families, then we all come together and it works well, and we change lives.
If nothing else, it will remind everyone.
Domestic violence can happen to anybody, anytime. It doesn't matter what race you are, what religion you are, what your faith beliefs are, what your background is, education, socioeconomic. It can happen anywhere, and it does.
Nearly 40,000 people reach out to the Connecticut Coalition Against Domestic Violence every year. If you or someone you know needs help, we've provided a list of resources on our website at fox61.com and on the Fox 61 News app. For a more in-depth look at the state of our domestic violence laws and to hear from a woman whose tragic experience with domestic violence led her to help countless women in their fight against domestic violence, listen to the Expect More Now podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Taylor DiCello, Fox 61 News.